Let me speak to you plainly, because in uncertain times, people don't need perfection, they need honesty. I want to start here because this is important. Right now, a lot of people are tired, not just physically, but emotionally. Tired of speeches that sound polished but empty. Tired of promises that don't match reality. Tired of feeling like the truth is being softened so it's easier to swallow. And I get that. Because when life feels uncertain, the last thing people want is to be talked down to or reassured with half answers. Honesty matters more than comfort right now. Not the kind of honesty that scares people for the sake of it, but the kind that respects them enough to tell the truth. Real honesty says, I don't have every answer, but I won't pretend that I do. It says some things are hard, and pretending otherwise doesn't make them easier. It just makes people feel alone. Here's the thing. People are stronger than we often give them credit for. What breaks trust isn't bad news. What breaks trust is feeling misled. When leaders try to sound calm at all costs, or confident when they shouldn't be, people can sense it. And once that trust cracks, it's hard to repair. I believe leadership isn't about standing above people, it's about standing with them. It's about saying, I'm not removed from what you're going through, I'm listening, I'm paying attention, and I care enough to be real with you. That kind of honesty doesn't weaken leadership, it strengthens it. Because comfort fades quickly. A reassuring line might feel good for a moment, but when reality hits, it leaves people feeling disappointed and disconnected. Honesty lasts longer. It builds something solid. It creates room for real solutions, real conversations, and real progress. So when I speak to you, I'm not here to perform confidence. I'm here to share the truth as clearly as I can, to acknowledge the uncertainty without fear, and to say this plainly. We can face hard moments, but only if we face them together. And that starts with being honest with one another. Uncertainty isn't an abstract idea. It's not something you read about in a report or hear discussed in a meeting room. Uncertainty shows up in very real, very personal ways. It's the pause before checking your bank balance. It's the quiet worry that hits you late at night when everything finally slows down. It's the question you don't always say out loud. Are we going to be okay? For a lot of people, uncertainty feels like carrying a weight you didn't ask for. You go to work, you take care of your family, you do everything you're supposed to do. And still, the ground feels unsteady. Plans get delayed. Dreams feel fragile. Even simple decisions start to feel heavier than they should because you're not sure what tomorrow will look like. And here's something that doesn't get said enough. Uncertainty affects everyone differently. For some, it's about rent or groceries. For others, it's about safety, dignity, or whether their voice even matters. Some people feel it as stress. Others feel it as anger. Some feel numb. None of those reactions are wrong. They're human. What hurts most, though, is when people feel like they're going through this alone. When uncertainty is treated like a personal failure instead of a shared reality. When someone thinks, why am I struggling when everyone else seems fine? The truth is, many people are struggling quietly. They're holding it together on the outside while carrying a lot on the inside. That's why it matters to name this feeling out loud. Because when we do, it stops being isolating. It becomes something we recognize in each other. And once we recognize it, we can start responding to it. Not with blame or judgment, but with understanding. Uncertainty doesn't mean people are weak. It means they care. They care about their families, their futures, their communities. They care enough to worry. And that care is actually a strength, even if it doesn't feel like one in the moment. What people are asking for right now isn't a guarantee that everything will be perfect. They're asking for acknowledgement. They want to know that the people making decisions understand what this feels like at the kitchen table, not just on paper. They want to hear, yes, this is hard. Yes, your concerns make sense. And yes, you deserve to be part of the conversation. When we talk honestly about uncertainty, we stop pretending that confidence means having no doubts. Real confidence is being able to say, I see the challenges clearly, and I'm still committed to moving forward. That kind of confidence doesn't dismiss people's fears. It respects them. And that's where connection begins. Not by smoothing over the uncertainty, but by recognizing it for what it is. A shared moment that asks us to listen more closely, care more deeply, and show up for one another in ways that actually matter. Trust doesn't come from sounding perfect, it comes from being real. People know when they're being spoken to honestly, and they know when they're being managed, reassured, or distracted. You don't need special training to feel the difference, you just feel it in your gut. And once that feeling is there, it's hard to ignore. One of the fastest ways to lose trust is pretending everything is under control when it clearly isn't. People aren't asking leaders to be superheroes, they're asking them to be human. To say, this is complicated, instead of offering simple answers to complex problems. To admit mistakes instead of explaining them away. To listen without defensiveness. Pretending creates distance. It puts up a wall between decision makers and the people who live with the consequences of those decisions. And when that wall goes up, frustration fills the space. People start to wonder what else isn't being said. They stop believing words and start looking only at outcomes. And by then, trust has already been damaged. Real leadership goes the other way. It lowers the wall. It invites people in. It says, here's what we know, here's what we don't, here's what we're working on. That kind of transparency doesn't make leaders look weak. It makes them credible. Because credibility comes from consistency between words and actions, not from pretending everything is flawless. There's something powerful that happens when a leader drops the act, when they stop trying to sound impressive and start sounding sincere. People relax, they listen differently, they feel like they're part of something, not just being spoken at. That's when trust starts to grow, not overnight, but steadily. Trust is also built when leaders are willing to hear criticism without immediately pushing back. When someone says, this isn't working, and the response isn't defensiveness, but curiosity. Not, you're wrong, but tell me more. That kind of openness sends a clear message, your experience matters. And let's be honest, trust takes time, especially in uncertain moments. But pretending speeds up distrust. Every time someone realizes the full picture wasn't shared, it confirms their worst suspicions. Every time reality clashes with what they were told, it widens the gap. But the alternative is harder, but it's better. It means choosing honesty even when the truth is uncomfortable. It means explaining decisions in plain language, not hiding behind jargon. It means showing your work, not just your results. When leaders stop pretending, people stop guessing. And when people stop guessing, they stop filling in the blanks with fear or frustration. That's when trust becomes possible. Not because everything is perfect, but because everything is honest. There are moments when avoiding the truth feels easier than facing it, when naming the problem seems risky or uncomfortable or politically inconvenient. But those are usually the moments when honesty matters the most. Because unspoken truths don't disappear, they just grow heavier with time. One hard truth is that some of the challenges we're facing didn't appear overnight. They've been building quietly for years. Ignoring them didn't protect anyone. It just delayed the reckoning. And now pretending they're simple or temporary does more harm than good. People can handle complexity. What they struggle with is denial. Another truth is that progress isn't always fast, and it's rarely neat. Change takes longer than we want it to, and sometimes it feels like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That can be frustrating, especially for those who are already stretched thin. But pretending that change is instant sets people up for disappointment, and disappointment turns into disengagement. We also need to be honest about limits. Government can do a lot, but it can't do everything on its own. It can set direction, remove barriers, and invest in solutions, but it can't replace community, compassion, or personal responsibility. Saying that out loud isn't an excuse. It's a recognition that real progress comes from partnership, not promises. Here's another truth that's uncomfortable, but necessary. Not every decision will make everyone happy. And that doesn't mean the decision was careless or cruel. It means priorities sometimes collide. Being honest about that, about the trade-offs, the constraints, the reasons behind choices, shows respect. Silence or spin does the opposite. We also have to face the truth that trust, once broken, takes real effort to rebuild. It's not fixed by one speech or one policy. It's rebuilt through consistency, through showing up again and again, through doing what you say you'll do, even when no one's watching. Avoiding hard truths might feel like protection in the short term, but in the long term, it erodes credibility. People start to disengage. They stop believing change is possible. And that's the most dangerous outcome of all. Not disagreement, but apathy. Facing hard truths is an act of respect. It says you deserve the full picture. It says you're capable of understanding this. And it invites people into the work of solving problems instead of keeping them at a distance. Because when we finally say the things we've been avoiding, something opens up. conversations get more real, expectations get clearer, and even if the path forward is still challenging, at least we're walking it with our eyes open. There's a lot of pressure on government to be everything at once, to fix what's broken, protect what matters, and somehow do it all quickly and perfectly. I understand where that expectation comes from. When things feel unstable, people look for something solid to hold on to. And government should be part of that stability. But honesty means being clear about both its power and its limits. Government can create conditions for change. It can invest in people. It can make sure systems are fairer, safer, and more accessible. It can step in when markets fail or when voices are ignored. Those things matter deeply. They shape daily life in ways that aren't always visible until they're missing. But government can't replace human connection. It can't manufacture trust between neighbors. It can't force kindness, empathy, or solidarity. And it can't solve every problem without the participation of the people it serves. Pretending otherwise sets everyone up for frustration. Here's the part that often gets overlooked. When government tries to do everything alone, it actually weakens progress. Solutions last longer when communities are involved, when local knowledge is respected, and when people feel ownership over what's being built. That doesn't mean government steps back. It means it steps in differently. Being honest about limits isn't about lowering expectations. It's about setting the right ones. It's about saying, here's where we can lead, and here's where we need you alongside us. That kind of invitation turns people from spectators into partners. There's also a responsibility on government to admit when something isn't working, not to hide behind process or blame, but to adjust. Policies aren't sacred. Outcomes are. If something isn't delivering real improvement in people's lives, it needs to change. That flexibility is a strength, not a weakness. At the same time, people deserve clarity. They deserve to know what's realistic, what will take time, and what trade-offs are involved. Clear expectations prevent false hope. And false hope, when it collapses, turns into resentment. When government is honest about what it can and cannot fix alone, it creates space for collaboration. For nonprofits, faith groups, workers, small businesses, and neighbors to play their part. Progress stops feeling like something handed down and starts feeling like something built together. That's how trust grows. Not through grand promises, but through shared effort. Not through pretending government is all-powerful, but through using its power wisely and inviting people into the process in a way that feels real, respectful, and grounded in everyday life. One of the most important truths in uncertain times is this: we are stronger together than we often realize. It's easy to feel small when the world feels chaotic, like your individual actions won't make a difference. But here's the reality. Communities are built on the small, consistent choices of ordinary people. And those choices matter more than we sometimes give them credit for. Strength isn't only in grand gestures. It's in showing up for a neighbor who's struggling, in volunteering when no one is watching, in listening when someone needs to be heard. It's in everyday acts of courage and compassion that ripple through the community quietly, but powerfully. We often underestimate how much impact these small acts have when combined. And yes, communities aren't perfect. Conflict happens, mistakes happen, disagreements happen, but strength isn't the absence of difficulty. It's the ability to navigate it together. Real strength comes from people who choose connection over division, dialogue over silence, and action over despair. It comes from recognizing that while we may not control every circumstance, we can control how we respond. And that response shapes the community around us. We also forget that resilience grows from participation. Waiting for someone else to fix things leaves us feeling powerless. But when people step in, even in small ways, they reclaim agency. They remind themselves and each other that they're not just observers of their lives, they're active participants. And that energy multiplies. It inspires others. It creates networks of support that no single leader or institution could ever replicate alone. Another overlooked source of strength is diversity. Communities are made up of different experiences, backgrounds, and perspectives. When we lean into that diversity, when we genuinely listen and include, we unlock solutions that no one person could imagine on their own. Our collective intelligence, creativity, and empathy far exceed what any one individual or even one office can produce. That is real, untapped power. This is why moments of crisis can also be moments of opportunity. When times are tough, people discover skills, courage, and determination they didn't know they had. Communities that face challenges together often emerge not just intact, but stronger, more connected, and more capable of facing whatever comes next. It's a reminder that strength isn't only measured in resources or authority, it's measured in how people care for one another, how they step up, and how they refuse to give in to fear or apathy. So if there's one thing to remember, it's this: the community already has the strength it needs. It just needs honesty, guidance, and space to act. And when people realize that uncertainty doesn't feel so paralyzing, it becomes something to navigate together as a community that refuses to be divided or defeated, even when the world outside feels unpredictable. Because true strength doesn't come from avoiding challenges, it comes from facing them side by side. In times like these, it's tempting to give in to cynicism, to roll your eyes at promises, assume the worst about people, or believe that nothing will ever change. I get it, it's easy to feel worn down when bad news is constant and progress seems slow, but cynicism isn't a shield, it's a trap. It numbs action and erodes hope, and it spreads faster than any solution ever could. Courage, on the other hand, is active. It doesn't mean ignoring reality or pretending everything is fine. It means seeing the challenges clearly, acknowledging the risks, and deciding to act anyway. Courage is showing up for the hard conversations, the tough decisions, and the work that nobody else is willing to do. And courage is contagious. When one person chooses it, it inspires others to do the same. Choosing courage over cynicism starts with a mindset shift. Instead of asking, why bother? We ask, what can I do right now to make things better? Instead of assuming the system will fail, we look for ways to strengthen it. Instead of waiting for perfect conditions, we take small steps forward, knowing that even small action adds up over time. This choice isn't easy. It requires patience and persistence. It requires the willingness to face discomfort, criticism, and even failure. But it also brings rewards cynicism never will: connection, progress, and a sense of agency. When people act courageously, they reclaim power over uncertainty. They become part of the solution instead of passive observers of the problem. Courage also means speaking truth, even when it's unpopular. It means having the honesty to say what needs to be said and the empathy to say it in a way that brings people together rather than drives them apart. It's not about grandstanding or heroics. It's about showing up consistently, aligned with values and a vision for better outcomes. And here's the thing: cynicism often feels safe because it protects you from disappointment, but it also isolates you. Courage, in contrast, connects you to the people around you. It builds trust, strengthens relationships, and creates momentum. It's the difference between watching from the sidelines and shaping what's coming next. In choosing courage, we model behavior that communities can rally around. It signals to neighbors, coworkers, and family that even in uncertainty, action matters. That even in tough times, hope is worth pursuing. And that together, ordinary people can create extraordinary change. Not by pretending fear doesn't exist, but by refusing to let it control our choices. Courage is a decision repeated every day. It's not a feeling. It's a commitment to honesty, to engagement, to showing up for one another. And when enough people make that choice, cynicism loses its grip, and a path forward, however difficult, becomes visible. Courage reminds us that we don't have to wait for perfect conditions to do what's right. We just have to choose it, and keep choosing it, even when it's hard. Here's the reality. No one has a perfect map for the future. No one can predict every twist, every setback, or every challenge that lies ahead, and yet we can still move forward together. Because moving forward doesn't require certainty. It requires commitment, presence, and a willingness to face the unknown side by side. Progress is rarely linear. There will be moments that feel discouraging, setbacks that seem unfair, and decisions that carry tough trade-offs. That's part of life and part of leadership. Pretending otherwise only breeds disappointment. But when we acknowledge that the path is uncertain, we also make space for creativity, collaboration, and resilience. It's in the gaps of uncertainty that real innovation and problem-solving happen. Moving forward together means leaning on one another. It means building connections that aren't based on convenience, but on mutual care and shared responsibility. It means recognizing that each person has a role to play, even the small, quiet contributions. Every act of kindness, every bit of effort, every voice that speaks up adds to the momentum. That's how communities become strong, not because someone tells them to be, but because people choose to be. It also means accepting that mistakes will happen. No plan will be perfect, no response will be flawless, and no system is infallible. But what matters isn't perfection, it's accountability. Owning mistakes, learning from them, and adjusting course is far more valuable than pretending nothing went wrong. That honesty fosters trust, builds resilience, and creates a culture where people aren't afraid to act because they fear failure. We can't wait for all the answers to show up before taking the first step. If we do, we risk standing still while the world keeps moving. Progress is made in motion, in experimentation, in dialogue, and in shared effort. It's built by people who care enough to engage, even when clarity is incomplete. Ultimately, moving forward together is about hope anchored in action. It's about recognizing that while no one can guarantee the future, each of us has the ability to influence it. And when we combine that influence, when we act with courage, honesty, and empathy, we create outcomes that none of us could achieve alone. Uncertainty doesn't vanish, but it becomes navigable because we are navigating it as a team. So here's the takeaway. You don't need all the answers to make a difference. You don't need certainty to act with purpose. What you do need is honesty, collaboration, and a commitment to keep going together. Because the world will continue to change, sometimes in ways we can't control, but the strength, wisdom, and courage we cultivate as a community will carry us forward. And when we move forward together, even without all the answers, we create a future that's stronger, more resilient, and full of possibility.